Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we're going to be tackling some really complex brain stuff today.
Yeah.
We're talking about spatial normalization of lesioned brains.
Right.
And, brains are complex enough as is.
They are.
But when you bring lesions into the picture,
Yeah.
it's a whole other level.
It really is.
And as you know, being a veterinarian with a PhD,
yeah,
you're dealing with these complexities all the time.
we are.
So we wanted to take a deep dive into a study that really digs into this issue.
Right.
It's called Spatial Normalization of Lesioned Brains. Performance Evaluation and Impact on fMRI Analyses
Oh, okay.
by Kringan and his team back in 2007.
Okay.
They really went all out and explored how different normalization techniques hold up when we introduce these lesions.
Yeah. And that's really the crux of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if we're making any assumptions on comparing damaged brains to brains that aren't damaged,
Yeah.
we have to know that our methods are sound. And that's what I think is so interesting about this study is that they didn't just analyze real brain scans with lesions.
Okay.
They took brain images from neurologically normal individuals
Right.
and digitally inserted fake lesions,
Oh, wow. Okay.
varying in size and location.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
So they're able to compare like apples to apples.
Exactly.
Or should I say brains to brains
Right.
in this kind of controlled environment.
Yeah.
What kind of insights did they get from this approach?
Well, one of the most striking findings was that one method consistently came out on top,
Okay.
especially when those simulated lesions came into play.
Interesting.
Unified models.
Unified models.
Yes.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So traditional techniques,
Right.
they rely heavily on matching specific anatomical landmarks
Okay.
between brains.
I see.
Kind of like aligning two pictures of a cityscape by matching up the Eiffel Tower
Wait.
or the Statue of Liberty.
Okay.
But what happens when a lesion is covering up one of those landmarks?
Right. It's like trying to read a map with a big coffee stain on it.
Exactly.
Things get a little messy.
Exactly.
You're trying to navigate with like incomplete information.
Right.
And I imagine those traditional methods might get a little confused
They do.
and end up distorting the image even further.
Yeah. And that's where unified models come in.
Okay.
Because they consider the entire shape and structure of the brain.
The whole picture.
The whole picture.
Not just those specific points.
Exactly. It's more like those 3D maps you see these days.
Right. So it can still guide you even if a few roads are blocked off.
Precisely.
It's adaptable.
And that's what makes them so powerful.
Right.
Particularly when we're dealing with these lesioned brains.
Yeah, because you just never know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
So this study found that these unified models were able to achieve accurate spatial normalization,
Often.
even without using additional techniques like
Right.
cost function masking.
Yeah. Cost function masking.
Now that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Didn't they explore that as well?
They did. They did.
What is that all about?
So cost function masking, or CFM,
Okay.
it's kind of like telling the software
Right.
to just ignore the lesioned area
Okay.
during the normalization process.
So just pretend it's not there.
Exactly. Like, hey, computer, just try to line everything else up,
Right.
and we'll just ignore that big elephant in the room.
But it sounds like that would have limitations as well.
It does.
Especially because, we're dealing with living creatures here.
Of course.
And these lesions aren't always going to be small or uniform.
Exactly. They can be quite large
Right.
and irregular in shape.
Which makes things a bit more challenging.
Very much so.
So it's more like putting a Band-Aid on the problem
Yeah.
rather than addressing the root cause.
Which is what the unified models seem to be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how did these different methods actually impact the fMRI results?
That's a great question.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we're trying to get an accurate picture of brain activity.
Absolutely.
And these lesions can really mess with that.
They can.
So what do they find?
Well, they found that using unified models for spatial normalization actually led to more accurate and sensitive fMRI results.
Okay.
Especially
those lesion brains.
So it's not just a theoretical improvement.
Yes.
It's actually translating to real-world results.
Exactly.
Which is what we want.
Absolutely.
So it has real implications for how we interpret brain activity
Yes,
in our patients.
for sure.
Be they two-legged.
They're four-legged.
Exactly.
That's right.
Can you give me an example of how that might play out?
Sure. So, for instance, the study looked at brain activity during speech comprehension tasks.
Okay.
And using unified models, they were able to detect these subtle
Right.
but important areas of activity in the superior temporal lobe.
And that's a region involved in
Language
processing.
Exactly.
And is it possible that those areas of activity
yes.
might have been missed?
They could have been missed, yeah.
Yeah.
if they had used traditional methods.
Potentially.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So using these more advanced techniques could help us uncover,
Right.
like you said, those hidden pockets of activity
Exactly.
in our patients' brains.
Leading to more accurate diagnoses.
Right.
And potentially even new treatment strategies.
Which is what we all want.
Precisely.
Now, I know we've been talking about these unified models.
Yeah.
But the study also touched on another important aspect.
Right.
And that's the role of parallel transmit coils in fMRI.
Yes.
Particularly at higher field strengths, like 7 Tesla.
Particularly at higher field strength.
Because as you crank up the magnetic field strength,
Yeah.
you get more detailed images.
Sure.
But it also comes with its own set of challenges, right?
It does.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So as we increase that magnetic field strength,
Right.
the radio frequency waves that we use to create those images can become less uniform.
I see.
It's kind of like trying to evenly illuminate a large room with a single light bulb.
Right. You'd have some areas that are really bright
Yep.
and others that are dim.
Exactly.
So not a complete picture.
And that's where those parallel transmit coils come in handy.
Okay.
They allow for more control and uniformity.
So they're like having multiple light bulbs.
Yes.
Strategically placed to get that even illumination.
You got it.
So in the context of brain imaging,
Yes.
what does that actually mean?
It means clearer images.
Okay.
More reliable data.
Which is what we always want,
Always.
especially when we're dealing with something as complex as a lesioned brain.
Absolutely.
Now, I know we've been diving deep into the technical stuff here,
Yeah.
but how does all of this
Yeah.
actually translate to real-world veterinary practice?
Well, one of the key takeaways for vets, I think, is being mindful of the limitations
Right.
of those traditional spatial normalization techniques when we're dealing with lesions,
Right.
just like in human neurology.
Yeah.
Those lesions can really distort brain anatomy and throw off those standard alignment methods.
So as veterinarians, we need to approach these brain scans
Yes.
with a healthy dose of caution,
absolutely healthy dose of caution,
especially when lesions are involved.
especially when lesions are involved.
Because what might seem like a clear-cut case
Yeah.
might actually be more complex
Absolutely.
than we initially realize.
Yeah.
And that's where the knowledge from the study comes into play.
Right.
Because by understanding the potential pitfalls
Right.
of the traditional methods
Yeah.
and the advantages of these more advanced techniques,
Right.
like the unified models,
Yes.
vets can make more informed decisions
Absolutely.
about how to analyze those brain scans.
For sure.
So it's not always about using the shiniest new tool,
No.
but knowing when a particular tool is needed
Exactly.
to get the job done right.
Yeah. And sometimes those older tools are still the best tools.
Right. They have their place.
They do.
It's about using the right tool for the job.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important takeaway
It is.
from this study.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get caught up in
Absolutely.
all the excitement of new technologies.
Of course.
But it's important to remember that sometimes
Yes.
the tried and true methods
Yes.
are still the best.
And sometimes the tried and true methods,
Right.
combined with some of these newer understandings, can be even better.
Even better.
Right.
So it's about using all the tools in our toolbox
I like that.
to really get the best outcome for our patients.
Absolutely.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive,
We have.
but don't go anywhere. Because in the next part,
Okay.
we'll be delving even deeper into these groundbreaking advancements in spatial normalization
Excellent.
and their implications for veterinary neurology.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Great.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been uncovering some really fascinating stuff about brain imaging and those smudged paw prints that make diagnosing neurological conditions so tricky.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle where some of the pieces are missing and others are bent out of shape.
Exactly. And as we learned in the last part, those smudges, those lesions, can really throw a wrench into our efforts to analyze brain scans,
They do.
especially when we're trying to compare them to those pristine paw prints,
Right.
their brains without lesions.
Exactly.
But what's been so encouraging is seeing how researchers are tackling these challenges head on.
Yeah, they're coming up with some really innovative approaches.
They're developing new techniques and technologies to help us see those smudged brains more clearly.
It's like we're getting a whole new set of lenses
Right.
to examine the brain.
Lenses that can cut through the distortion
Exactly.
and reveal the underlying structure and function.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of context, this paper emphasizes that researchers and clinicians should be mindful of potential sources of error or variability.
Right. We can't just focus on the lesion itself.
Exactly. It's like trying to bake a cake.
Yeah.
If your oven runs hot, you need to adjust the baking time, even if you're using the same recipe.
That's a great analogy.
So what are some of those oven quirks
Okay.
we need to be aware of when it comes to brain imaging?
Well, for starters, the patient's age can have a big impact on how brain tissue appears on an MRI.
So a lesion might look different in a young, sprightly Labrador retriever
Right.
compared to a senior pug.
Exactly. And it's not just age.
Okay.
Underlying medical conditions like kidney disease or diabetes can also affect how brain tissue looks on a scan.
That's true. It's all connected, right?
It is.
Those underlying conditions can subtly alter the brain's environment,
Absolutely.
which might then influence how a lesion develops or how the surrounding tissue responds.
Precisely.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about the MRI scanner itself.
Right.
Different scanners have different strengths and limitations,
Of course.
which can obviously influence the images we obtain.
It's like comparing photos taken with a high-end DSLR camera versus a smartphone camera.
Right. The quality and level of detail can vary significantly.
Exactly.
So even if we use the same spatial normalization techniques, the results might differ slightly depending on the scanner used.
That's right. Which is why it's so important to understand the nuances of the imaging process itself.
Right.
And not just blindly rely on the output of a computer program.
It's a great reminder that technology, while incredibly powerful, is just one piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
We need that clinical judgment, that ability to connect the dots and see the bigger picture.
Yes, context is key.
Exactly, to truly make sense of those brain scans.
Well said. And it's that interplay between technology and human expertise that makes this field so fascinating and challenging.
It's that human element that keeps things interesting.
And let's be honest, even with all the advancements in brain imaging, there's still so much we don't know.
Absolutely. It's like we're explorers charting a vast and intricate wilderness.
A wilderness full of surprises.
Exactly. And speaking of uncharted territory, this paper really got me thinking about those perilesional areas we talked about earlier.
Right, the areas surrounding the lesion.
They seem to be a major source of head scratching for neuroimaging experts.
And for good reason, those perilesional areas are like the aftermath of a volcanic eruption.
Okay.
There's ash and debris everywhere, making it difficult to see what lies beneath.
That's a vivid analogy.
It's messy and unpredictable.
So we've got this lesion, this epicenter of change.
Yeah.
And then we've got this surrounding zone that's also in flux, potentially undergoing its own healing or adaptive processes.
Right. It's like trying to understand a conversation where half the words are missing.
And the other half are mumbled.
Precisely.
It's a complex interplay of damage repair and adaptation.
It really is.
That makes those perilesional areas so difficult to decipher.
It's like trying to solve a mystery with only half the clues.
So how do we even begin to make sense of those areas? Are there any techniques on the horizon that might help us navigate those murky waters?
Well, one promising avenue is developing even more sophisticated imaging techniques that can differentiate between various types of tissue changes within those perilesional zones.
So instead of just seeing a blurry mess, we might be able to distinguish between inflammation swelling,
Yes.
areas of dead tissue, areas where the brain is trying to rewire itself.
Exactly. And that kind of detailed information would be incredibly valuable.
That'd be huge.
Both for diagnosis and treatment.
Right, because then you could really tailor the treatment plan.
Absolutely. Imagine being able to target specific areas.
Wow, it's like having a map that not only shows you the roads, but also tells you which ones are under construction.
Yes.
And which ones are completely impassable.
That's a great way to put it.
And while we're not quite there yet,
Not yet.
the research in this area is rapidly advancing.
It's an exciting time to be in this field.
It really is. And speaking of exciting possibilities, this study also highlighted the potential for collaboration between human and veterinary medicine.
Oh, absolutely.
In the field of brain imaging, it's like those two fields are like ships passing in the night.
Right.
Each with its own unique perspective, but both trying to navigate the same vast ocean of the brain.
I love that analogy, and it's so true. We have so much to learn from each other.
We do.
The challenges we face in analyzing those smudged paw prints in animals are often remarkably similar to the challenges faced in human neurology.
Absolutely. And those shared challenges present amazing opportunities for collaboration.
They do.
And knowledge sharing.
By working together, sharing our expertise, and learning from each other's successes and setbacks, we can accelerate progress in both fields.
It's about breaking down those silos and recognizing that we're all on this journey of discovery together.
Exactly. And it's that spirit of collaboration that fuels innovation and ultimately leads to better outcomes for our patients.
Two-legged and four-legged.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground in this segment.
We have.
But before we move on to our final thoughts.
Okay. I want to pause for a moment and address our listener directly.
Okay.
You, my friend, are on the front lines of veterinary neurology.
Yes, they are.
You're the one examining those patients, poring over those brain scans.
Right.
And making those tough decisions about diagnosis and treatment.
It's a challenging but rewarding job.
You're dealing with the complexities of those smudged paw prints every day.
They are.
And your dedication to unraveling those brain mysteries is truly inspiring.
It is.
We see you, we appreciate you.
We do.
And we hope that this deep dive into brain imaging has provided you with some valuable insights that you can apply in your practice.
Absolutely.
Remember, even small shifts in perspective can have a big impact on the lives of your patients.
They can.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's been quite a journey exploring those smudged paw prints, those brains that make diagnosing neurological conditions both fascinating and challenging.
They really do, and as we've seen those smudges, those lesions, they can really complicate our efforts to analyze and interpret those brain scans.
They do, especially when we're trying to compare them to those pristine paw prints. You know, those brains without lesions.
And heck, those pristine ones, they give us that baseline, that reference point.
Exactly. But what's been so inspiring throughout this deep dive is seeing how researchers are tackling these challenges head on.
They really are. It's incredible.
And developing these amazing new techniques and technologies to help us see those smudged brains with so much more clarity.
It's like we're getting a whole new toolbox.
Right,
A whole new set of lenses to examine the brain.
Lenses that can cut through the distortion and help us see those underlying structures and functions.
Precisely. And that's what's so exciting about this field. It's constantly evolving, always pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely. And in this final part of our deep dives, I'd love to look ahead to the future of brain imaging.
Okay.
Because these technologies are advancing at an incredible pace.
They really are.
Remember those futuristic concepts we discussed, like lesion priors?
Oh, yes.
And multispectral data?
Those are game changers.
They really are. But I have to admit, as intriguing as those concepts are, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what they might actually look like in practice.
Okay, sure. I can paint you a picture.
Okay.
So imagine you're examining a canine patient with suspected seizures.
Okay.
You perform an MRI, and there it is, a smudge on that beautiful brain canvas.
We've all been there.
But now, instead of just seeing a blurry blob, the imaging software armed with those lesion priors, it analyzes everything.
Everything.
The shape, the size, the location, even the intensity of that smudge.
Wow.
And it compares it to this massive database of lesion patterns.
Okay.
Drawing on the collective knowledge of countless cases.
So it's like the software has instantly consulted with every veterinary neurologist on the planet.
Exactly. It's like having a team of experts whispering in your ear.
Incredible.
Guiding your every decision.
So it's not just about pattern recognition then?
Right. It goes beyond that.
Those multispectral images you were talking about?
Yes.
They add another layer of sophistication, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now we're not just looking at the structure of the brain.
Okay.
But we're also getting insights into its function and composition.
So we're seeing the lesion and understanding how it's impacting the surrounding brain tissue.
Exactly. It's like going from a black and white X-ray to a high-definition color MRI.
Wow.
We can see those subtle details that were previously hidden.
So we're essentially piecing together a much more complete and detailed picture of the brain.
Precisely. And as those multispectral imaging techniques continue to advance, who knows what we might uncover?
It's exciting to think about.
We might even be able to detect those early changes in brain activity.
Wow.
That signal the very early stages of a neurological disorder.
Which could be life-changing for our patients.
Absolutely, because early detection often means better treatment outcomes.
It really does. And, you know, throughout this deep dive, one of the things that struck me the most is that unwavering drive.
What's that?
To push the boundaries of what's possible in brain imaging.
Yes, to keep searching for new and better ways to understand those complex brains.
Exactly. And it's not just about developing those new technologies.
Right.
It's about challenging our assumptions and being open to new ways of thinking.
Absolutely. It's about embracing that spirit of curiosity and collaboration.
Recognizing that we're all in this together.
Researchers, clinicians, even computer scientists all working towards the same goal.
And that goal is to improve the lives of our patients.
Exactly, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4.
Whether their brains are pristine or bear the marks of those smudged paw prints.
Because every brain has a story to tell.
Beautifully said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm filled with a sense of awe and inspiration.
Me too.
Knowing that there are these brilliant minds out there working tirelessly to unravel those brain mysteries.
They're making incredible strides every day.
To bring those smudged paw prints into sharper focus, and ultimately to help us provide the best possible care.
The best possible care
for those creatures who bring us so much joy from Vet NeuroChar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.